Hello there, YouTubers and fellow modelers out there. Well, welcome to the grand finale. Boyd back here with you. This is the grand finale of my DJ Scratchy and Chevy Cheeseburger box stock community build-up. I did this MPC 1/16 scale Richard Petty Dodge Charger that he raced in '73, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Before I start showing you the model here, I wanted to talk about, just say a shout out to those guys for putting this on. I had a great time participating in it, and I'll definitely do it again when they have the next one. It was really fun, and I think it's a great inspiration to modelers out there that you can take a basic out-of-the-box kit and just put a little effort on detail and some creativity with your imagination as far as how you paint it and different things like that, you can build a really beautiful model right out of the box. It's not always necessary to go out and buy all those expensive aftermarket parts, so I think it's a really great idea that they did it. And like I said, I'll definitely do this again if they have another one. It was a lot of fun. I don't really build that many car kits. In fact, it's probably been, I've built one or two in the last month or so, but before that it's been probably 25 or 30 years since I built any car kits. And so it was fun to go back to that. My main thing is regularly, sci-fi and things like that, but I had a lot of fun with this, and I'm really happy with how the kit turned out. Let me get this box out of the way and we'll start looking at it a little bit closer here. You can see, get you a little closer to it with the camera. You can see that one of the first things you notice is that I've got the window net down on this. I wanted to be able to see on the interior of this car, not have that window net blocking everything, so I just basically heated this up with my heat gun and folded it over a piece of small brass tubing so it would make that curve, and I have it so it can just kind of hang on the window like that, and I can take and get rid of it whenever I want, and look inside the interior that I spent a lot of time working on. Let's take a look at it from the front here, and we'll show you that we did a lot of work on that grill and did all that detailing in there. The front air dam, we've got the little air intake at the valance down there in the bottom looking nice, and the hood pins and everything have been put on. One of the guys asked me about the glass on this, and you can see how shiny and glossy that is. I didn't touch it. It's right out of the box. They did a really nice job molding that glass, and so no troubles with that at all. One of the better examples of glass I've seen in a kit in a while. Now, to glue the glass in, I use this product here called canopy glue, which some of you guys may not have seen it before, but canopy glue, the airplane model guys have been using it for years, as it says, to glue their canopies on their airplanes, because this stuff won't fog up the clear parts at all. The nicest thing about it is that if you do happen to be putting it on and you smear it on the glass or whatever, a damp, soft, take a soft towel and wet it down with a little bit of water, and you can wipe it right off. It won't leave any kind of residue or stain it in any way. And so if you make a little mistake or whatever, you can start over. Now, it doesn't dry as fast as regular glue, so as I mentioned earlier, I had to glue this glass in and let it sit overnight to make sure it was going to be secured. But once it's dry, it's just as strong as regular glass. So if you guys haven't checked that out, you might want to give that a try. Microscale also makes a very similar product called Micro Crystal Clear, which does the same thing. And so it'll work great for putting in window glass like that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the engine now. And you can see we've got that monster Hemi in there. I've got this little air box here so it can be removed. And I'll show you the motor here in a little bit more detail. You can see we've got the big elephant motor stuffed in there, and I do mean stuffed. It's a tight fit, but once it's all in there, it turns out really nice. You can see the reason I chose this kit is because it comes with all these beautiful details, guys. The plug wires, the hoses. You've got everything on this. They didn't leave out one detail on this entire model. If it was on the real car, it's on this kit. And so that's really cool. Even the throttle linkage is hooked up to the firewall. You've got your oil cooler lines, fuel pump, oil pump. Even the alternator is mounted on a real bracket and a separate belt. And I mean, it's just really super detailed, and I'm really, really happy with that. And let's start looking around the different sides here of the car. You can see now we've got the chrome detailing on here, the door inserts, the fuel filler valve, the overflow tube, the hood pins on the front and the rear, this little insert down here that goes right above the exhaust. And now I was going to do, looking at the pictures of this car, I noticed that the wheels on Richard's car that he raced were sort of just a regular painted silver finish, and I was going to take my tester's dull coat and dull these down, but I decided not to. I like the chrome look, and I built this out because it's more of a like pristine example of his car, more of a show car kind of thing than an actual used race car. And so I decided to leave those alone. But here at the back, you can see what we did too is we've got our back glass in, we've got the window braces on there. And we did this bumper like we talked about, where we've got this aluminum insert and the chrome around the edges. And you can see the rear detail on the chassis there, really nice, with the double shocks, the fuel cell and everything. Here on the bottom, you can see we've got all of our suspension in place here with the torsion bars, sway bars, the oil cooler lines. You've got the differential cooler lines here at the rear, the double shock absorber setup. As I mentioned, steerable front end on this. And so it's just really, really detailed, and that makes it cool. So again, talking about the model itself and the build, no issues to report. The only thing that didn't really fit that well on this kit was the headers. The headers need a little bit of adjustment. If you glue them on in the exact center position that they're supposed to be on the engine, when you tuck the engine down in there, you'll find out that they kind of, the rear part of them is canted down too far, so they would have hung down too low. So what I wound up doing, it was just taking a Dremel tool and slicing into them right where the collectors normally would come together on a real header, and just took a grinding tool and grinded it down a little bit of a bevel and glued them back together. So it actually looks like a weld joint there, and tilted them back up so they're aligned at the, much closer to the floorboard. They're not, as you can see, they're not drooping down. I mean, they were tilted way down before, so we helped that out a little bit and straighten that out. Now the overall rake of the car I'm happy with. As you can see in the picture, that's the actual stance of the car. As I talked about earlier, the rear spring shackles are adjustable, so you've got 3 different positions that you can set your ride height at, and I chose the middle one, and I think it gives it a nice stance. Something else I did here on this side of the car, you notice that that tire has a little bit of a leaning at the top. Well, these NASCAR cars back in the day, and they still do that, they do what they call camber on that, which is the tilting in of the front tire. And what that's for is that, you NASCAR guys will know this, but the other people out there, when they race around those high banked ovals, the wheel tends to want to be forced over. So if you had it straight in the middle, you're only going to be riding on the outside edge of the wheel due to the centrifugal force trying to push it over. So they lean it a little bit more in so that when those forces occur, the tread will ride on the center part of the tire, and you'll get maximum grip out of the front tire that way, and not lose your steering ability in those high-speed turns. So I added that little detail into this, and you'll see that when those cars are sitting, they do have a tendency to be leaning like that. So anyway, guys, that's going to be a wrap for this one. Again, had a lot of fun with it. It was an absolute great kit. There were little details as far as the flash and things like that on the parts, but it's an older mold, so that's to be expected, and it's nothing that us modelers aren't used to. It all cleaned up very easily. No major fit issues or anything like that. As I said, I highly recommend this kit. I'd definitely build another one. In fact, I've already ordered another kit. There are aftermarket kits out there, decal kits for these, so there were several famous drivers that drove these Charges back in the late 60s, early 70s, so I'll probably build somebody else's car down the road and have a match set, and that'd be kind of cool. So again, that's been a wrap for this one, guys. Thanks for checking it out, and thanks for all the compliments, and we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming on the channel, which we're usually about sci-fi here. Had a nice little diversion for the last couple of models I worked on. But I've got my client's TOS 1350 Enterprise coming up this week that I'll be finishing up. We'll take you all through that one. Then I'll be starting on my Mobius Flying Sub, and I've got some Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica kits that are coming in that we're going to be doing some in-depth reviews on the bench here for you. So sci-fi people, don't worry, I'm not going over the cars, but it was a nice diversion for a little while, and again, it was fun to participate in the group build, and if they have another one, I'll definitely participate. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. Build your models out there, have fun, and we'll see you next time, and until we do, happy modeling, everyone.
A wet track greeted 40 drivers and over 100,000 fans, so the 1973 Daytona 500 started under yellow.
Fastest qualifier, Buddy Baker, is on the pole. Pete Hamilton alongside. That makes it Dodge Plymouth up front. Then it's Cale Yarborough, Gordy Johncock, Herschel McGriff, Richard Petty, and A.J. Foyt. The green flag waves and Buddy Baker in the Dodge number 71 breaks out into the lead.
13 caution laps dried out the track, and then it was finally time for wide open throttle. Pole sitter Buddy Baker and 1968 champion Cale Yarborough went at it immediately.
Cale Yarborough in the Monte Carlo 11 is pushing Baker every foot of the way. They're setting a tremendous pace and clocking laps at over 188 miles an hour.
1970 champion Pete Hamilton was the first mechanical victim that day, suffering a blown engine after only 33 laps. Gordon Johncock started in the third row, another IndyCar driver looking to win at Daytona. He was gone right after Hamilton, but in May his season would improve as he won the first of his 2 Indianapolis 500s. His sponsor in those wins was STP, backers of Richard Petty. Country star Marty Robbins, a part-time stock car driver, was making his Daytona debut. He may have won a Grammy for El Paso, but there would be no hardware for him at Daytona after he hit the wall coming off turn 4 into the tri-oval.
Baker's out in front with clear sailing. Meanwhile, Yarborough and Petty have to move up through the traffic.
The King had led briefly before the caution, and now he battled for second with Cale Yarborough, back in NASCAR full-time after spending a couple of seasons on the IndyCar circuit. With Junior Johnson's preparation, Yarborough's Chevrolet was keeping up with Baker's Dodge. But even though Yarborough led 25 laps, Baker seemed to have the edge all day, and ultimately Buddy Baker led 156 of the 200 laps.
On the 130th lap, the leader is still Buddy Baker in the Dodge number 71. Cale Yarborough second in the Chevy 11, with Petty in the Dodge 43 running third. Yarborough tries Baker high and low. His Chevy can run with the Dodge, but he doesn't seem to have the power to pass Buddy.
When John Utzman's engine spewed oil on the track, everyone headed for the pits. But with over 50 laps remaining, one more fuel stop would be required to make it to the checkered flag. Once again at Daytona, pit strategy might be the determining factor. Cale Yarborough's engine finally expired after 156 laps. Baker and Petty would fight it out from this point on. Baker was clearly faster, but Petty just wouldn't go away.
On the restart, Baker is first. 4 cars back, Petty is second, with Bobby Isaac third. Richard fires past the slower cars, picks up his pace, and begins closing the gap on Buddy Baker. Bobby Isaac holds on to third, with Dick Brooks in the Dodge number 6 running a close fourth. With Cale out of the race, Petty takes up the challenge and works Baker over on every inch of the racetrack. But both drivers know they haven't enough fuel to go the distance. Both cars must pit one more time.
Petty suddenly ducked in for fuel with 11 laps remaining. The Petty Enterprises team executed a nearly perfect pit stop. 1 lap later, Baker followed suit, but the King had gotten a little edge and was now ahead of Baker by a few seconds. Baker knew he could catch him until...
Suddenly, it happened. Entering turn 3, Buddy Baker just blew the belly out of his Hemi, and the Dodge that led most of the race had the fastest time, and with only 6 laps to go, looked destined for victory lane. Now heads for the garage, out of the race. Down off the high bank, 4th turn, onto the tri-oval, and the Petty Blue flies under the checkered flag, winner of the 15th annual Daytona 500. Bobby Isaac finished second with Dick Brooks third, A.J. Foyt fourth, and Herschel McGriff fifth.
194 laps were all that Buddy Baker's engine lasted. Nobody else was close. Richard Petty won the 1973 Daytona 500 by 2 laps, the largest margin of victory ever. It was his 2nd win in 3 years in the Great American Race and his 4th overall. More Daytona 500 wins were on the horizon for the King.